right? So if you look at a user, right, today, I think everyone knows Chat GPT. So everyone today uses this to some extent, Chat GPT, right? If you think about it, it's a model, right? It's a generative model. So if you do this on the side, it's really Gen AI, right? So that's it. So it's not new, meaning it's been trained, and if you give it some data, it would more or less like generate. Right? Usually use it for generation. You just use it for generation. Whether the thing is people sometimes confuse these things. Generation is generation. Whether you're generating content, you're generating code, you're generating a business idea, it's all things you're generating, and that's why it falls under Gen AI, right? Not just GPT. There are a number of them. So, right, if you use Claude, for example, is just these are models, right? These are pretty much like models that you see out there that you can use. So if you more or less like install ChatGPT, for example, whether free or paid, you can pretty much say, I need you to give me this text, or I need you to complete this for me, or I need you to give me like an idea for me to write this email, right? So that's really what users use. Like that's really how users interact with these things, right? But if you take it, so these are all models. So what you see on top, these are Gen AI. Yeah, I think this is a good place to write what they are. So they are models, right? So these are all models, right? They basically help with generative stuff, right? But when you move that needle a bit, you would still see how users are using some AI systems, kind of. I think I just cleaned the line, but it's fine. I'm going to bring it back. So I'm still going to draw the line. We still need it just to make it clear. So I'm still going to draw it, right? So we've seen how users, to some extent, use many of the generative Gen AI models that are out there, right? We've seen how users use them. But again, what about agents? Users also use agents, okay? So there are times where users find themselves using agents. So agents, I'll put agents here. Agents. So on top, we have models, and then beneath, we have like agents. Sometimes it's kind of hard to write here, but let's do this. Agents, okay? So we've seen Gen AI models, right? And then we are not talking about agents, right? So when you look at agents, what are they? Um, the definition around agent is basically something that can. So there is this element of think. So something it has the capability to think, it can decide, right, and it can act. These are the construct of an agent. So whenever you see an agent anywhere, but again, we remember we're still talking from a user's perspective, right? So you use agents. A lot of us use agents in one way or the other. And how you use agents is basically it can think on your behalf, it can make decisions, and then it can act, right? So that's really one of the major constructs of an agent. It can think, it can decide, and then it can act, right? But we use agents in different ways as it stands still, right? People use agents in different ways. So let me tell you one way people are using agents. So people, for example, in their what do you call it? In their IDEs. So how are they using it? So in your IDE, you have an agent. So IDE, right? Agents, right? So what does it do? It basically help to code, right? I don't know if you fall into this category, but there are agents like this. From a user's perspective, is what I'm saying. Like there are agents that actually help you to code, right? I use them every day. So you can basically code with agents, right? Remember, we're still talking as users, so help to code. So we have ID agent, meaning that we've said from a user's perspective, remember, we've not gone to the builder side of things. We are still talking from the users. We said AI plus AWS, and we started saying that there are two categories of people today. There are users and there are builders. The users have models that they can work with, right? So whenever you find yourself using any of these ChatGPT, Cloud, or Gen AI models, you're basically a user, right, at that point. But you can also move one step forward and start using agents, right? An agent is basically something that can help you think. It can help you make decisions based on the prompts you give it, and then it can also act on your behalf. And I'm looking at popular agents that are there, and from a tech perspective, one popular one that you'll see is IDE agent. What it means is that it can help you code. So it means it can think, think based on the problem you've given it, it can decide, and then it can act, right? So it will help you generate code, right? So help to code, and things like help to code, and then it can also help you generate, generate code, right? So, I mean, this is it. And trust me, there are other agents you can see out there. This is me talking from a tech side, right? But there are other agents you will see. There could be some other agents. Um, yes, so somebody's saying maybe for some, my employer has banned coding agents and Copilot for security and legal reasons. I think it depends on how you're using it, but usually if you use the enterprise version, they usually tell you that they can't train the model with your organization's code. They will tell you a lot of things that, yeah. So usually the way organizations would discourage you from using models directly, but it's fine if you go through the license of the organization. So it's good. Most companies actually want you. If an employer does not want you to use agents or use coding, I don't want to say backward, but honestly, today every company wants you to use one of these tools out there. Okay. So remember, we still talked about models and we talked about ID agents, right? This case, I'm just using ID agent because we are like this is a tech community. But there are other ways you can use agents, right? In my own case here, I'm saying help to code, right? So meaning you can go to Cursor, use one of its agent to code. You can also use it to generate code. You can use it to generate documentation. Many things you can do, right? So we'll stop at that. Um, we'll stop at that. As a user, people are already doing this as user. But remember, the target is not users. I'm really targeting builders here. And if we want to translate this on the left, so we're moving you from a user who just uses Gen AI models. You use IDE agents that helps you to code, that helps you to generate code. What about you start building your own agents? Like, what will it take you to build your own agents, right? So what it means is that first of all, before you can build an agent, you need to know what is an agent, right? So an agent, obviously, it's still whatever the definition was that we did create, right? So it's basically it's a smart system. So smart, um, so it's smart system, right? That can, can it can so do the same things that we've mentioned before. So, and you see a practical. So all these things that I'm doing, I'm going to show you exactly how you build all this. But a smart system that can think, right? So think, right, and decide, act using Gen AI. Okay, so that's what's really. So when you now think about an agent, we saw on the other side that if you were a user, you're already using these agents today, right? So, but if you think about how they work, they are doing this loop for you. They're doing like thinking, they're deciding, they're making some actions. But in our own case, basically, it's going to be using Gen AI, right? And that Gen AI is key. So you have to mark this word, right? So this one that is down here is something you need to take note of, right? So when you think about it, we've already more or less like we've done the definition that says smart system that can help you think, decide, and act. Remember, I am raising builders, so I'm taking you from being a user on the left to being a builder, right? So when you ever think about it, it means you're thinking about a system that can decide, that can think, that can act using generative AI, right? So generative AI there is really the fact that you can have an agent and not use a model behind the scene, right? That model can be anything. It can be ChatGPT, it can be Claude, it can be or I mean, if you've built anything with AI before, you see that there are so many models that you can work with, right? So good. We're still laying down the foundation so that when I start building, it becomes very easy for you to exactly see how everything comes together, right? So what makes up an agent, right? If from a builder's perspective, what makes up an agent? So every agent you see out there, there is something that is an ingredient that puts together an agent, right? So whenever you see an agent, there is really things that you need to look out for. Okay, so what are those things? First of all, so an agent would have these things that I'm mentioning. You don't see them if you're a user, but as a builder, you need to understand them. Okay. So we've given a definition above, right? We've given a definition, and now we really want to say what are the elements of an agent, and that's what you have to pay attention to when you're building. Because if you don't do that, you will not be able to build an agent, right? We're moving from user to becoming builders, right? So we will put what I will do is I'll put an agent up here, right? And then I'll create some branches. I'll create one branch. I need another branch. I need another branch, and then I need one final branch, right? So the first thing I'm going to do is that what really makes an agent from a builder's perspective, right? The first thing is a model. A model is needed. There's no way today that you want to build an agent without needing a model, because we said that an agent is a smart system that can basically more or less like that can think, decide, act using Gen AI, right? So it means that if you ever want to build an agent, you need a model behind it, right? This model can be anything. It can be ChatGPT. So this model can be ChatGPT, right? It can be Claude. It depends on what you want to use. It can also be Claude. Um, it can be Nova, if you want, whatever. It just depends. You choose your model. Maybe you prefer some models than others. Maybe some are cheaper than some, and you should know these things, right? Usually, some models are actually cheaper than some. Some are more costlier than others. Okay, so it's something you need to get used to when you start building agents. I think this is still in cleaning mode, so I need to bring this line a bit further. Okay. So we've seen that for an agent, because these things will help you. I'll build an agent now on AWS, but before I can build, you need to see these things. You need to understand it. Honestly, these days toolings are in place. It's easy for you to build stuff, but sometimes I think the missing link is always understanding what you're building. And sometimes to build, to me, I think for me, building is fast for me, right? Sometimes it's about creating the problem, breaking the problem down, and you also notice that as you grow, when you work with agents, usually it is easier for you to build faster when you understand the problem. You're just leading, you're architecting, and agent is just building on the side with you. Okay. So these things will become clear from a practical, but we need to set the foundation, and I love to do that. That's how I pass knowledge. Okay. Because building this is fast, but you need to understand what we're building. So we've said. So I'm going to zoom in a bit, just in case you're joining, you don't understand where we started from, AI and AWS, and I'm trying to tell you some things that you need to learn, right? And I'm saying, as a user, you're on the left. You're using ChatGPT, you're a user. You're using any agent that is out there. The most common ones, if you're a developer, there's an agent in your IDE that is helping you to code. So you're a user. You can continue to be users, right? Like a user. But on this call, I'm raising builders. I'm raising people who are passionate about building inside of AWS. And I said, an agent is basically a smart system that can think, decide, act. Take note of those three words using Gen AI, right? Gen AI is not possible without a model behind it, right? Because that's all Gen AI is all about. It's a model. They call it a large language model. So when you hear LLM, that's really the meaning, large language model, that basically can help you, generate. It's usually generating stuff, whether it's generating an image, a video, a text. It's all Gen AI, right? But now we are building intelligence on top of that model. Sometimes those models, their capability is limited, and that's why agent comes in. Agent is really building something smart on top of Gen AI, right? Gen AI can do some things out of the box. Okay. So we've said that you need, I'm going to clean this line just to have space, and I'm still going to extend this. So we said you need a model for you to have an agent. And the next thing you need a system prompt. Okay. So I'm just going to say system prompt. Don't worry, it's going to make sense at the end of the day, right? So system prompt could be things like you are an agent, send an email, send an email. Maybe your agent is as simple as this, honestly. We have simple agents, but agents can be very complex. I hope you know that Gen AI today cannot send email, right? You can't. You cannot send email, but you can with an agent with the power of Gen AI. I mean, this is just a trivial example. Take note. What I wrote here is trivial in the sense that you an agent send an email could be like a system prompt, right? Which means that, okay, take this message that you're an agent, send email using the text supplied. So maybe I'll say using the text given. I think this is going to make it a bit complete, right? So the system prompt in this case, remember I said agent is made up of four things: a model, a system prompt. I'll mention the for two other things. But the point here is that you give it a system prompt and say you're an agent. So um, the agent you used on the left is basically has been programmed that way. It has a model behind the scene. It also has like a framework that really says, this person is trying to do stuff, help the person get there, right? In our own case, we're also trying to build ours. So we say model is given, a system prompt has been given. And then what's the next thing? We will now have a set of tools, right? Which is the most favorite of it all, right? So, I just did what I'm not supposed to clean. Let me see if I can do, yeah, undo. And then let me move this a bit to this side, okay? Don't mind me, it's just screen real estate we're fighting for here. I'm just going to do undo and then move this a bit just to give myself space, okay? Remember, we're still branching. We're just branching. Don't worry, this will make sense once I build on the call, right? Once I build this, it's going to make sense. But just follow me on this journey. So we said a model, an agent is made up of four things: a model, a system prompt. Meaning a model is really what connects an agent to Gen AI, right? A model behind the scene is still going to do the job. But the agent is just a smart system that can think and it does the orchestration, right? You have to give every agent has a system prompt, meaning there is a prompt that controls the agent itself, right? And then when you have those two, what is the next thing? You have a set of tools. Please pay attention to this one because this is really what sets a model apart from agent. Tools is really what sets them apart. So it could be an agent. What sets it apart from model, like a model that ChatGPT, is that if you tell ChatGPT today send email to these people, like send email for me, there's no way it's going to do that. He doesn't. It does not know how to do that. But an agent can, right? And how will an agent do that? Because you've given it a tool, a set of tools to use. So here, what you see in this kind of place is like you can have API calls. So API calls. Um, Let me just wipe this out so that it's clear. So you can have API calls, meaning you have it like a tool, and you say whenever you're doing this thing, call this API, right? You can say invoke AWS services. Right now, there is no way you can do this with just Gen AI, right? So there's no way you can do this with Gen AI. There's no way. There's no way you can tell ChatGPT to send message to SNS on your behalf. There's no way, right? Which is where agent comes in, because an agent, you can actually embed tools to an agent, right? For you to have all that done, right? So tools are really external things. So more or less like external dependencies that an agent needs to complete its job, right? So API calls, it could be you're trying to make a decision, but for that decision to happen, you have to make a call to an API, get a response, transform that response, and then use Gen AI behind the scene and then all this will make sense once there's a practical. But just take note that an agent needs a model, a system prompt, and tools for it to work well. Okay, so we've talked about three things. What's the next? What's the next item an agent needs? Sometimes you need model and a system prompt. So, but these other two that are on the right, it depends on your use case. So tools is not mandatory. You use tools. In the demo I'm going to show, we're going to use tools, we're going to use system prompt, we're going to use model. But it's not a must you use it. Like sometimes you don't really need to use like tools. Maybe you don't have any tools, external calls that you're making. Maybe you don't need that. Okay. So let's go further. What's the last tool? An agent will need. So I'm hoping I can extend this. Don't mind me. Last thing an agent will need, it will need a memory, memory/context. Okay. And you ask me, why do you need a memory and a context? It's very simple. So if you have an agent, for example, you have like a chat agent, for example, that you're talking to it over time, and you guys have been discussing, you don't want every time the person who is talking to the agent comes in, the conversation is fresh. You don't want that. You basically want to be able to say, oh, I remember the last time we talked about this, right? If you also see from a user's perspective, I didn't really mention that, but if you notice how the difference when you use ChatGPT in the browser is that it's essentially keeping context for you. So if you notice how you can actually ask ChatGPT and say, remember what we discussed, when I told you about these, it's because it's keeping a memory actually. So all the conversations you're having, there is a memory that is being stored. It's basically trying to know you. It knows it knows your preference. It knows what you prefer. It knows what you like. All that is powered by memory and context, right? So what it means is that if if you really want, sometimes you don't need this, right? But if you really want to keep a conversation going with an agent, you want to be able to remember past conversations, then you need like memory and context. Okay, so just know that this is not right now. Is not we're not talking. This is not specific to AWS, right? Everything I'm saying right now is not. Just know that I'm not talking AWS yet, but I'm going to bring it home. Okay, just know that this is central. It's basically if you are dealing with agents today, that's really how agents work. Okay, so memory. What benefit are you going to get here? So things like recall previous conversation, right? So things like um, retain the user's preference. Okay, preference. Good. So what it means is that if you have an agent that you guys have been discussing for a while, you want to be able to retain the user's preference. You want to be able to see the things they like. You need to have a memory where that is stored. You want to be able to recall previous conversation. So you need a memory. But if you don't need a memory, in our example here that I'm going to show you quickly, we won't use a memory because it's just one off, right? But in the real agent, production grade agent, you need a memory because sometimes you need to recall previous conversation. Sometimes you need to retain the user's preference. Okay, good. So we've talked about, remember, builder. You can see there's more things from being a builder, right? If you are just a user, you don't need to discuss all the things on the right because from a user's perspective, you're using AI today, you're using agents, right? You don't need to know much, right? More. But if you want to switch to a builder, then you need to start understanding these things, okay? Good. So we've laid that foundation. So let's go down a bit. So we said for an agent, you need model, you need a system prompt, you need tools, you need memory context, right? All this is AI conversations, trust me at this point, right? So let's now talk about the AWS side of things. So we'll now say, so up there, I did say, maybe I said AI plus AWS, but everything I mentioned is all AI. Let's not talk about AWS. Let's bring it home because I'm an AWS teacher here, right? More or less like mentor. So I'll bring it home. I'll now say AWS, right? So in the context of AWS, what do you need to really build an agent? It's not even AWS in this case because agents, right, that you see, all you need is a framework. So the first thing you have to pick a framework. So it's not just even AWS. So let me just undo this. It's really not. It's not really. It's not really AWS in this case. It's all right. So how do you get started with agents? So agents. I'm just going to write agent 101, right? So I've already told you exactly what you need for you to ever have an agent, right? So you need a model, you need a system prompt, you need a set of tools, you need memory and context. But how do you now get started with an agent, right? The first place you start, you need a framework. It's just how so first, number one, you need a framework. That's just what it is. So framework. Because because there is, for you to ever build an agent, you need a framework. I said from the beginning that there is like this a smart system that can think, decide, act using generative AI, right? But how will that thinking, how will that deciding, how will that acting work? You need a framework. That's just what it means. So it means that for you to actually do that, you need a framework, right? And in this case, that's when you have things like so framework will do strands. We have this LangGraph. There are many frameworks out there. Okay, so we do strands is one of it. There's LangGraph. There's I think it's LangGraph like this. Yes. So there's LangGraph. So there are many frameworks out there that you can use today to build your agent. This is non-AWS yet, but I'm going to bring it home. So framework, you can use Strands. I'm going to be using Strands on this call, but you see all the elements that I've just mentioned is all inside. So the framework, you use Strands or you use LangGraph, right? And then, honestly, the next thing will now be you use a model, right? It can be any model of your choice. You could use ChatGPT. You can use charts, GPT. You can use what do you call it? You can use Claude, for example, as a model. You can use Nova, which is AWS own model. You can, right? So you can use Nova. for example, right? So whatever model you want to use, nobody is tying you to any model. You can choose whatever model you want to use, right? And then here, basically, there will now be tools. I'm just going to say tools optional. So optional in this case, then I'll say memory. Um, So memory here will also be optional. I mean, if you need memory for your, but these are advanced concepts that I'll be sharing as time goes on, right? So we need a framework, basically. We cannot build agents on our own. And when I say framework, so just so you know that it's not magic, right? Today, in the traditional way, when you build web applications, you know that you cannot build web application just like that. You have to pick a framework. So let's compare these to like web development 101, right? So let's go to this side because most people on this call maybe might know web development, maybe AI is what is new, but where you do web dev 101, what does that look like today? If you also have questions, you can put them in chat. I'll get to it, but if you can also put them in the chat. So when you do that, if you compare these to web dev 101, right, you will notice that your framework here, the framework that I'm talking about, um, can be something like Django, right? Which is like a Python framework, right? Like a Python framework for building web application. You could use something like there are so many of them. You could use Laravel or something, right? But these are all well-known frameworks that can actually help you build web applications. So this is not, it's not new. It means that if you also want to take your agentic development one level, right? Um, you also would need more or less like an agent to help you. You need a framework to get started. Okay. So we've done that. Let's see what's the next thing to do. Not sure why it's not zooming in a bit now. Um, so let's recall. Agent 101, we've talked about you having a framework. We've talked about having a model that you want to use. And all this will be replicated from and we said tools is optional. And we said memory is also optional. Okay, so let's move forward. So how do we now bring it home? So what did we even say? Agent 101. So let's now bring it to AWS in the context of AWS. So let's bring it home. So in the context of AWS, for the example that I'm going to show you and the walkthrough that I'm going to show you, is that for our framework, so remember we said we need a framework. So here I'm just going to say for framework, I'm going to use Strands here on this call. Framework. This is me making my decision, but you can go with any other agent, any other framework that is out there. Okay, so Strands is what I'm using for my model. I'm going to be using Nova as a model, and then for my tool, I'm just going to use one tool. But just know that agents can use multiple tools out there. Okay, but here I'm just going to use a tool called AWS. That's the tool I'm going to be using. And for memory, I'm going to say I don't need not applicable for now. Okay, so any in this case. But remember that basically an agent is made up of a framework, a model, a set of tools to call, and then a memory, right? In this case, I said it's not applicable because I'm not using it. So where do we go from here? I will show you what all this, right, in practicals. Just so you know, an agent is basically a smart program, basically, that can think, it can decide, it can act to achieve a goal, right? And it is basically behind the scene using a model. In this case, it's Gen AI. It's basically generative AI behind the scene, right? But the framework is just like how you build web development. So if you see on the what do you call it on the right, if you want to build a web application today, you have to use like a framework, maybe Django, Laravel, and all that. But it's just what helps you bring an agent or bring the agent to life, really. Okay. So we're going to look at a practical example of how that looks like today, which is what I'm going to be showing next. Just so you know, also, I think I've mentioned it. I have a website that I'm building. So this lab is actually from the website. I'm more or less like I'm just doing it here. But the lab itself, if you were part of the website, it's a lab you can go through, right? And there it's basically all the steps that you need to take for you to achieve it. And it's going to explain why we're building it, what's the rationale behind it and all that. But let's start. So I'm going to take you to the console. Just so you know, this is just the beginning, honestly. And if you listen to me from the start till now, you must have gotten something, and I think it's going to also help you. Just know that this is like a friendly introduction to how you can actually start leveraging many of these systems out there. Okay, the beauty of it is that it already builds on the things we've learned. So many of the things here, apart from the agent side of things, are the things I've already taught you, which makes me happy, because it just means that everything you see in AWS, they layer on top of themselves, right? One knowledge is used somewhere else. It's not like sometimes you find something you're working, it might be new, but there's still a way for you to use all the AWS ecosystem that is in there, all the services and all that. Okay, so let's start. There's a screen that you're not looking at. I'm basically going through my lab. I'm basically just going through my lab, right? Because I built this as a lab already that you're going to be experiencing from my website once it's out. So I'm just going to go through it because I still, there's what they call dog food, right? I don't know. I think that's the word where you consume what you make. So in this case, I'm actually trying. Most times I try, because the way I'm creating my labs is labs. They are not labs. They are labs that have been tested that you can go through and get results. So not labs that you go through and you're trying to reproduce a step and you cannot. Okay. So the first thing I'm going to do here is I'm going to create a bucket. And there's just a reason I'm doing that, because Strands right now because in my own case I want to use I want to use one tool. So but what it means is that I really need to install the framework, number one. I need to also install the tools, and for me to do that, it's going to make my Lambda heavy. There's no way my Lambda can contain that. Lambda has a limitation of how much the code can be. So what I want to do is I want to package the Strands agent itself and the tools into a layer, a Lambda layer that I can reuse. So what I'm just going to do is I'm just going to call it, I'm going to create a bucket. I think we know this already. So it's a general purpose bucket. I'll call it Brainyl, just to make it unique. So I'll call it Brainyl agent S3, right? Bucket is what I'm going to do. So I'll create this first. And then honestly, everything I'll just leave it bulk public access, disable everything. I'll just leave it as is. And then I'm just going to create the bucket. We're used to this step already. This is like the easiest. Okay. So I'll create this topic. While I'm here, I'm going to go to 10-minute email. Maybe it's not the time, but I really want to create a 10-minute email, right? So before that, I'm going to go to SNS. I'm going to create an SNS topic. So I'll go here. I'll create, let me just see which name I'm using. So I'm basically calling it demo agent topic. So I'm going to go here and create a topic. So I'm just going to do standard topic, okay? And then I'm going to say agent demo topic, my agent demo topic, and honestly, what I'm sharing right now, it's all in this, is all in the slide, it's all in the draw that I was, more or less like the pictorial representation that I was, but this practical is just going to bring it to life, but everything is there. And I'm going to, once we are done with this lab, I'm going to now take you back to what I drew and connect the dots. Okay. Here I'm creating an SNS topic. So I'm just going to create the topic. And then as usual, I think this is normal step. We need to create a subscription. Else, if you send something to SNS, it doesn't get back to anyone. So I'll take this topic. I'll pick is more or less like a protocol, is email. In this case, I'm going to take my 10-minute email that I've created. I'm going to paste it so that I'm subscribing to it. So I'm going to do Control B. And then I'm going to create the subscription. On the right, I will get an SNS that says I need to confirm my subscription so that I can start getting email. So I'll see it. I'll click on the left. It says subscription is confirmed. So at this point, I already I've linked my SNS. I've pretty much linked my SNS to an email such that whenever messages goes to the SNS, I'm going to see it in the email, right? Cool. So all this is set up. We have a topic. We have an S3 bucket. And just so you remember, the S3 bucket in this case is basically just to keep our Lambda layer, because Lambda, like I've mentioned, there is just a size limitation they can have. Okay. So let's now start the lab. This you can do from your local machine, but I like to do Cloud Shell. So I just like to do it directly from the browser. Okay. So I'm going to do this. I'm just going to go to Cloud Shell. So what I'm going to do is that I'm going to set some environment variable. So first here, let's give it time for it to open. Okay, so let's wait for Cloud Shell to open. Remember, we're trying to build our first agent, right? Just our first agent. And we've looked at what it takes to build our first agent on AWS. What we really need is we need a model behind the scene, and we need a framework. In this case, we've chosen Strands, and we also need a set of tools, right? And then we need a memory. But in this case, it's not a memory. I'm not using memory in this case. So I'm just going to do region. In this case, I'm just setting some environment variable just to make it easy. So I'm working from US West 2. Okay, so this is my region. And then I'm going to do bucket is equal to, what's the name of that bucket that I created? I'm just setting that environment variable. So it's this one. So Brainyl agent S3 bucket is really the name of the bucket. So I'm just going to paste it. Just call it bucket is that, right? I think this is standard stuff. The next thing I'm going to do is, if you know how to, so I'll paste a command here, but it's basically not, it's simple. What you just need to pay attention to here is that I'm making a directory called Strands layer. And then inside of it, I'm also creating a Python directory. So the point is that the way layers are formed is that if you are creating the Python layer, there has to be a directory inside of the called Python, and then it's in there that you have to install your stuff, right? So in this case, I'm just creating a directory. I'm creating a Python directory inside, and inside there is really where I want to install the layer. In this case, the Lambda layer. Okay, so I'll do this. It's there. So now what I'm going to do is, if I do ls, you see I have a strands underscore layer folder. I'm just going to go inside, right? So I'll cd into it. Now I'm inside that folder. I can just do ls so that you see what's there. There's a Python directory. Now that I'm in there, many of you may know PyPy, as a package manager. But here I'm going to use UV. UV is also one of the new kits in the block that can basically help you do package management, right? So I have a command handy here, and basically this is really the installation step if you want to install UV, right? Because why am I doing this? So let me just tell you the reason I'm doing what I'm doing. So if I do Python version, there's a Python version that comes with Cloud Shell. So if I do Python version, it's 3.9. But with what I want to build, I need a higher version, okay? And that's why I want to install a Python version that I want, okay? So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to copy that command. If you go to UV, they will show you the installation step. So I'm just going to do that. It has installed. And it's telling me I can actually run UV command to see what's happening. So if I do UV, you can see it tells me a set of things that I can do, right, with UV command. Once I have that in place, the next thing I really want to do is I can use UV to install a specific Python version. So here I'm saying UV Python install 3.12. That's because that's the version I want to use. So in this case, it's saying Python 12 it already exists, but that's really the command, right? Now that I have that, what I will now do is that I will say pip. Pip is obviously what you know. Everyone knows pip if you really want to install requirement. But here I'm saying pip install, but use version 3.12, right? And target means put it inside of the Python directory that I just shared with you, right? The one that I showed before, because really that's how you package a Python layer, okay? So in this case, I'm saying push it inside of that Python directory. And I'm saying, what do you need to install in there? Install Strands agent. You remember we're trying to build our first agent on AWS, and you need a framework, right? There are so many frameworks out there. In this case, I'm using Strands agent, right? And because as part of these tutorials, I'm also going to use a tool. I'm also installing Strands agents tool, okay? So what I'm just going to do is I'm going to do this. It has installed. That's the beauty of UV. UV is very fast, right? So it's something you are going to see. I think once I have that, the next command I really want to run is to zip. I ran it fast, and that's why you didn't see it, but I'm going to show you the command that I ran, okay? It's still doing its thing. It's still basically adding all the files into that. It's zipping everything that I need. So it's just going to take time, but I'm going to show you exactly the command that I ran, okay? Just let's give it some time. Remember the first one we did installation, and then here we're doing, okay, so which command just ran? Let me see, just be sure. Okay, so this one was really where we installed. It's already installed. So the command that you didn't see that happened really fast was that I was zipping. So I'm just zipping everything that is in that Python directory, and I'm putting it as a strands layer, like zipped. So really that's how it should be. And when I do ls, you see that there's like a strands layer py 312 zip, right? And that is really what I want to create as a Lambda layer. Okay, so the next thing I want to do is I want to move that into my bucket, and I'm going to show you the command. So the command is here. So I'm saying that copy this directory and throw it inside of the S3 bucket that I created before coming here, right? So it's standard stuff. Just S3 copy this strand zip into S3 this bucket / layer. You know, I'll just do this. It's going to move it. It has moved it to S3, and then we can confirm that. So if I go here, I can refresh. You would see that there is now a key called layers, and then in there is like a zip. It's 43.1 MB, right? So the point is that all I did was basically install Strands agent tools, and then I packaged it and then I pushed it to S3. It's here. The next thing I want to do is I can create a layer now. So what I want to do is to create a layer, right? A Lambda layer, right? Because we need that Lambda layer for our Lambda function agent that we're going to be creating. And I'm also going to show you the command. This you can do from the UI, but I'm just using the console here. And you can also do this using Terraform, right? All these things that I'm doing now, it can also be done with Terraform. But the point is I'm saying AWS Lambda published layered version, right? The name is Strands Agent Pi 12. 312. The bucket is the bucket we've defined. The key is layers. This file exists. We've seen it just now, right? Compatible runtime is 3.12. The region is the region we've said above, right? I'm just going to do enter. So at this point, it's really going to more or less like create a Lambda layer. That's really what is going to happen at this point. So let's wait for it to run. Yeah, so it has created a layer basically. So if I go back to my account and I check what do you call it? So we are still in Cloud Shell, but if I go here and I go to Lambda, remember here we're still doing prep. We're still doing prep. But the good thing about this, if you do this once, that's it. You won't do it again. You won't have to do it again. But if I go to Lambda, what will I see? I would see there is like a layers folder, right? And if you notice, there is really strands layer here, and right, it's a basic layer. So what we did is we installed the agents, we installed the tool, we packaged it as a layer, uploaded it, and layers. It's something that is good. So if you ever know Lambda function, you need to start using layers, because layers are a way for you to more or less like keep your requirements separate from the Lambda application code itself. And the benefit that can bring is also that your Lambda function can be exactly what it needs for the job to be done, instead of like putting so many things as part of the installment. And your Lambda functions can be light, you can edit it in the UI, which is exactly what you're going to see. So we've created a layer, right? We've created a layer. So the next thing we now need to do is that, remember, we created a layer. We now need to create our first agent. And how do we do that? We go to Lambda functions. So I'm going to do functions, right? So we know there's a mentorship Lambda function there. We have it. But here we are going to create us. Like I told you, I'm actually going through a lab, my own lab that I've created. So here what I'm going to do is I'm going to do author from scratch. So I'll paste the name. So message to French LLM. That's the Lambda I'm building. I'm building a Lambda that takes a message and simply returns the French version. That's really it. It's simple as written, but it's just to tell you how agents are. And it can be more complex than this, because it's really using all the things I've mentioned. It's using it to use a model, it will use a tool, and then the only thing it's not going to use here is it's not going to use memory. Okay. So here I'm creating a Python. I've named it whatever I want to name it. And then I'm just going to look for the Python version that I want to use. Is that execution role? I think that's one thing that is important. I have to create one. So let me just check if I have any IAM role. Remember, Lambda functions will always want to do something on your behalf. It means they need a role, right, to use for them to do that. Everything in AWS is more or less like you have to have like set of permissions that grants them the role that they need. So let me just do Lambda. Let me do agents and see if I have one. So I actually have a Lambda agents role, right, that I've created before. But again, what you are going to see inside of it is that if I zoom this in a bit, what you are going to see is just it's something that you are used to. You know it, right? This trust relationship. A Lambda would have to assume this role. That's number one. What are the permissions given to it? It's basically what you need to. I want to share with you, okay? Just in case you want to create yours. It has the permission to create a log group. It has the permission to create log stream and then put log events into that stream, right? Take note, it has permission to send message to SNS, which is the most important things you need to pay attention to. I don't know why I lost that, but let me go back to it. So it's strand, this, and we were looking at the permission. I'm just going through it. Log stream, these are common stuff. If you install a Lambda function today and you give it a basic execution role, it's going to give you all this. The only two new things we're adding is that we're giving it permission to publish. Number one, because we want to use the SNS part of it as a tool in this case. We're also giving it Bedrock, which is where Bedrock comes in. So if you ever know of Bedrock, it's just the fact that Gen AI models can just, you can use Gen AI models, right? You can just use them in a serverless fashion, right? Where you invoke them and then you only pay when you're using them. So we're going to be using Bedrock invoke model with model response, right? Those are really some of the things that the agent needs to do behind the scene for us. Let's now go to Bedrock so that you understand how this all works. So when you actually go to Bedrock, not agent core is a different conversation, but let's go to Bedrock. The point is that when you go to Bedrock, what you notice is that there is a couple of there is like custom models. It's not what where I'm going to, but there's really model access. So before there used to be like a place where you need to more or less like choose if you wanted a model or not. But now they've retired this just to say that models are available in your account if you will need it. You can disable if you want a particular IAM user not to have access to a model, so you can do that. But let's look at the models we have right now. So if we go to more or less like here, model catalog. So there's like a model catalog you can go to. What it means is that you will see all the models that are in your account, meaning you can call any of these models anytime, right? So there's like serverless, there's like different providers. Let's look at the ones from AWS, right? So there's Nova Lite, there's Nova Pro. I'll be using Nova Pro in this class. So let me show you what Nova Pro looks like. It's basically this. This is really the model ID, right? This is the most important thing you have to take note of. Because the way Bedrock works is that it's like a serverless way of you using AI models that are out there. It's like a serverless way of using model. So you have a model, and basically you're invoking it from Bedrock. You can see the deployment type is serverless, right? Which is beautiful because all these things that I'm building is all serverless. If it's not being modeled, if it's not being invoked, I'm not going to incur any cost, right, using it. So we've created up until this point, we're trying to create a Lambda function, and I just want to show you the role that the Lambda function needs. It needs to send SNS topic, message on SNS topic. It also needs to invoke a Lambda, a Bedrock model behind the scene, which is the one that I just showed you, right? So we're going to change the execution role to use the one that I just showed, right? So Strand, the role that I just created is this one. So this is the one we're using. For additional configuration, I don't really need it to be inside the VPC. I don't need all this. I can just leave it. I'll create a function. All right. The only thing I need to pay attention to, I want a particular Python version. It's 3.12, so that's good for me. So I'm going to create Python. I think this is basic stuff, right? So if you've been with me for a while now, creating Python function is straightforward, right? The only thing is I'm going to go to, while the function is creating, I'm going to go to the configuration. Here, the timeout, I'm going to set the timeout to 60 seconds because I noticed from test that 3 seconds, it's not going to be enough, right? Remember, Lambda has like a timeout, right? How long it can execute. So in this case, I'm just going to set it to 1 minute, right? So 60 seconds, which is basically 1 minute, right? And that's all I want to add. So just take note that but again, when you test this out, if you had like a lower timeout, it's going to time out, and you just need to increase. It depends on remember, this is a very simple agent. But your agent can be complex. It could be that the agent is going here, checking stuff, going here. It depends on how long that is going to take. So you need to be able to set the right timeout for your Lambda function, right? So, and again, this approach, I also want to mention, this is me using Lambda function, but honestly, there are several ways that I can host a Lambda agent on AWS, but we're just getting started. And I really want to start introducing this to the community so that you see that some of the things you know is still valid. You just need to now begin to add the other part to it. Okay. So the only thing we will go to check is that the code that has been given to us right now is basic code. We cannot use this code for our Lambda, for our agents, right? But again, one thing you should also know that we actually created a layer. Right now, we're not using it. We need to use that layer. So we'll go to configuration. We'll scroll down to where is it? I think it's no. If you go up here, there is room for you to do layers, right? And then you can add a layer. Okay, so layer is just like, okay, there's a set of instructions that you have out there. There's a set of things that have already been installed as part of this Lambda function, so you don't need to install it again, but you can use it. So here I'm going to do custom layer, right? And then I'm going to pick my own layer. Sometimes AWS has layers that you can use for specific reasons, but in this case, we built our own. So I'm just going to use it. Somebody's asking me for the lab. Yes, all these, I'm actually replaying the lab. So there's a screen you're not seeing. I'm replaying my own lab because it's all on the website that I'm going to be launching very soon. But I'm just following the lab myself, right? So the whole idea is that you create a layer like this, and then you use that layer. So I'm just going to add it to the Lambda function. So at this point, this Lambda function has now been given the ability to use Strands agent. That's just what it means. So because I've given it a layer, there's now one layer that is here. The only thing that is left for us is that the code right now is not an agent. It's not an agent code. We need to give it an agent code. Right now, this is basic code. Okay. So what I'm going to do is to bring the what do you call it, the agent code that you need, and then you're going to see all the things that I explained before, the elements of the things that I've explained, and then you're going to just see how it works. Okay. So we are going to bring the agent code. It's also from the lab. I'm just going to copy it. I mean, we can't be on this call and we're writing all this code. Okay, so but I'm going to walk through it one after the other so that you see exactly what it's all about. And I'm going to, let me see if I can zoom this a bit, and then I'm going to walk you through the code. But it's very simple code. Honestly, it's the simplest you can see. Let's look at it. So the first thing we're doing is that, remember, we gave it a layer, and that layer has Strands agent already. So here we're saying we are using a framework. It's just how you use Django or how you use any of those frameworks out there. In this case, I'm saying import agent from Strands, right? Strands is my agent in this case. It could be LangGraph, it could be other kind of frameworks you're using. In this case, we're using Strands. We're also saying from Strands the model, give us Bedrock model, because either way you need to choose which model you're going to use. Remember, if you look at the context that I shared, an agent needs a model, it needs a prompt, and then it needs a tool if optional, and then it also needs like a memory. Those two are optional, but at least it needs a model and it needs a prompt. Those two things are like must, right? Because prompt is what tells the agent what to do, and then the model is really if it needs the agent support to work, right? The model support to work. So in this case, we are saying import the model from here, and then here, this is the first time I'm introducing you the fact that an agent can use tools. In this case, there is really an inbuilt tool, use AWS, so which is the one we're using here. But trust me, there are many tools out there. You can have your own custom tool that is checking your database. You can have your own custom tool that is calling your own API. You can have a tool that is going outside. Honestly, there's a lot in this ecosystem. But here I'm using the simplest, which means it's a tool that would use AWS service, right? That's just the tool I'm using here. But one thing you notice is that there's like region, there's region set. There's one thing also being used here, like set SNS topic ARN. We've not set that. So I need to actually set that before we invoke the function. But while we are waiting for that, let's still continue. So here we're defining a model, and we're saying Bedrock model. The model ID is this. It's exactly the model that I showed you on the other side. So if you go to model catalog, if you scroll down, you can see the model ID, right? Amazon, Nova Pro, V1. If you wanted to use Claude, you wanted to use ChatGPT, any of them, it's just to copy the model ID and go and use it, right? So that's exactly what I'm doing. So in the code, I'm saying use this temperature. You can learn more, read more about that. But the whole idea is that the lower the temperature, you're just more or less like you're being more deterministic, right? So that you're not giving the agent more room to more or less like fetch more result. You're basically just reducing it to just be deterministic. And in this case, we're trying to do a translation. It's a very simple LLM that will do translation for us. So we're trying to make sure it's deterministic, and we're keeping it at 0, right? But again, this is really the definition that you need to pay attention. So we have an agent, and we're saying an agent, we're giving it a model. An agent needs a model. In this case, we're using tools. Tools can be optional, but in this case, we are using it, right? And in this case, we are saying that you are a translator. When you receive a message, that message is the text to translate, right? Translate it to French, then publish the translation to SNS topic, right? So you can see in this case, you can see here we are saying you're a translator. That's the system prompt. We're saying you're a translator. When you receive a message, that message is text to translate. Is it text to translate it to French, then publish translation to SNS topic with subject translated, and then output only the French translation. No quotes, no explanation, no questions. Just take the text from the user, translate it to French, and that's it, right? Now, when you scroll down, oh, I think I lost that function now. I'm not sure why my mouse is just moving unnecessarily. Like, it's moving when I don't need it to move. But let me quickly go back there again. And I've not even saved the code. I don't think I have saved it. Let me see if it was actually copied down. Okay, it's here. Cool. I think the ID was smart enough to not let us lose it. So let me just scroll up. So it says when you get that text, translate it, blah, blah, blah. But the beauty of it is that you can see the input to be prompt, blah, 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 and topic ARN if you wanted to. But you can see how simple it is. It's just that's the instruction, basically. So you are going to get a prompt from the user, and then translate it to French, and then send something to SNS. But if you look down in the code, really, that's all. So there's nowhere we're doing Boto3, call SNS. There's nowhere. Do you think this is going to work? Because why it's going to work is that we're using a tool here, and the tool is use AWS. And in this case, we are also saying that take the text that you're going to collect from the user, translate it. When you translate it, publish the translation to SNS topic, because we know you have a tool at your disposal called use AWS. So behind the scene, that use AWS tool knows exactly how to send message to SNS, right? Remember, there's so many tools, and you can have your own custom tools, right? But it's as simple as that. We collect the prompt, we pass it to the agent as the message, and that's it. And we return the response to the end user. And this response should actually end up in the SNS topic, right? So let me just go back to my 10-minute email, just add more 10 minutes, just to make sure we have enough time to test, right? So what I'm going to do now is that, honestly, at this point, the function is ready, the layer is there. The only thing I think is missing is that this SNS topic ARN, first of all, I need to deploy the Lambda function. That's number one. So we have to deploy. All this is still just written. It hasn't been deployed yet. So I've deployed it. The next thing I really want to do is add environment variable, right? Because it needs it. So I'm going to go to here, scroll down to environment variables, and then I'm going to add a new one. For the region, I don't really care, because if I don't add, it's going to default to US West 2. But it depends on what environment variable you are using. So we're just going to go here and look for that topic. The topic we have is this one. It's the demo agent topic. We're just going to copy it. So it's here, the ARN is here. And then once that is copied, I'm going to go back to Lambda function. I'm just going to paste it, right? So save. So now we have, honestly, at this point, everything is wired up. So the only thing we now need to do, let's test. Hopefully, let's believe it's going to work. So here, I'm just going to go, instead of key value, I'm just going to delete all these other keys. And then I'm just going to go here and say prompt. I'm going to do prompt because I know that's the key is expecting. Okay, if you go back to the Lambda function, that's exactly what it's expecting. I love, teaching, let me see, teaching AWS on TikTok. Let's see. So we will have this, and then let's test. I don't know. Let's see if it's going to work. So we'll do this, and let's see what we get. Yeah, as with most things, when you test like this, I'll wait for the result. You can see it's taking time. So if I had gone with the original timeout, it probably would not work. But you can see it did work. It's telling me status code is 200. I love teaching AWS on TikTok, and this is the translation, right? I think it did blah, blah, blah. I'm not sure. Maybe let's try this on Google. Let's see. Let's try this on Google Translate. So let's do Google Translate and see. Maybe let's see if the model was accurate. So we'll just do this, we'll paste this, and we'll do French. We'll just look for the French version. Honestly, this is like the simplest way of introducing the model for you, but I really want you to understand it, right? But you can see this is exactly what was translated. So if I copy this, it's the same, is what you see here. The question is that, did the user get email or not? Let me check. He did get an email, right? So the user was sent an email saying, this was the translated text. This is exactly what we saw. But we didn't have to pipe that. We didn't create any Boto3 making call, send SNS. I think if you've been on this call before, you've seen where I've used Boto3, and I would say, Boto3 send, all that has been abstracted. And now just giving the agent a simple prompt saying, take a text from the end user, translate it to French, or in this case, yes, to French, and then send the user to send the message once translated to an SNS topic, and that was it. So everything you know about the SNS topic, the subscriptions, all those it still works, right? The only thing that is new here is basically the fact that we took a Lambda function and we converted it to an agent, right? But this agent, as simple as it looks, is very intelligent. It can do more things. Right now we have it, just the basic, because I really want to show you what an agent is made of, right? So let's go back to the code. Let's look at it again one more time, just to put all the things we've learned today. And then I'm going to go back to this, to the diagram that I was drawing, just to show you. So what we did was that we created an agent, and we said we were using a framework. In this case, we call it Strands. Strands is the agent framework we're using. There are many agents framework that is out there, because this one is very cool in the sense that it's all AWS. So everything is all tied to AWS, and it's just very easy for you to roll out your agent, right? And we're using tools. There are many tools. In this case, we're using a very simple tools called use AWS tool, right? And then we did define a model. We gave it a temperature. We created our agent. We gave it system prompt. That's really what defines the role of the agent in this case, right? You're a translator. Send, pay attention to this. Publish the translation to SNS topic. So if you check the agent, it said there's no function where we are saying we are manually doing it. It means the agent is thinking, is acting, is taking decisions, right, based on the prompt. So it takes the text from the message from the end user, translates it to French. It knows how to exactly publish it to the SNS topic. And the reason is because you've given it a tool. The tool is use AWS, meaning it knows exactly how to call AWS services on your behalf, right? And then when we scroll down, that's really it. And then we just pipe the agent, we got the response from the agent, and then we return the response back to the UI, okay? Now let's go back to what I was sharing before, and maybe that would simplify it. So if you go back to where we started this entire diagram from, you see that Agent 101 is really everything we've shown in the UI, right? It's basically a framework. We chose one in this case, Strands Agent. A framework can be any framework you want to use, and then we choose the model. In this case, we use the Nova model. You can also replace that, and that's the good thing about Bedrock. The fact that that Nova model that you saw, we can actually swap it. We can just go there and use a different model and test your result and see maybe this model gives you better result than this other model. Remember, our use case is very simple, but your agents can be more. Your agents can actually be more complex than that. Maybe you feel your agent will do better. You tried it on one model, it didn't work as expected. You can try it on a different model, and that's what Bedrock gives you, because you don't need to configure the model behind the scene. Basically, you're just calling the models as APIs, right? So now in this case, Trans Agent is actually invoking those models behind the scene for you, right? And then tools, in this case, it was optional, but we did use, so when we bring it down to AWS, we did use a tool that is called AWS. Here we didn't keep memory because it's one-off, right? Translate text to French. But if we were to replay this problem, and which is one of the things I'm going to do as part of my labs, because we've created like a mentorship lab before as part of this series using, what do you call it? Using Lex, right? An AWS service, right? But again, I really want to replay that whole episode using an agent, just so that you see how the flavor is going to change. But the point is that you can't have memory, because if someone was discussing with your agent in the front end, at some point you really want to understand what are the things you guys have said in the past. What is the person's preference? If the person is trying to book mentorship, for example, do you know if they've booked a particular course in the past? Maybe you want to recommend a different course for them. Honestly, there's so many things that you can build, but this is like a friendly introduction. But one thing you've seen us use, we've used a framework, we use Strands, we've used a model, Nova. But you can change that model. You can change it, like just go to the code and pick a different model. They're all available for you. And then we are using a simple tool called AWS, right? But honestly, this is everything that there is to an agent that is out there. Any agent you see, anything that is agentic today works on this premise, right? It is controlled by a framework. You have to pick a framework to write your agent. If you were a builder, you need a model, you need a set of tools. Sometimes you don't need them, sometimes you need them. Memory, if you don't need. So let me recap so that just so you see where we're coming from in today's lab, right? So let's see where we're coming from. And that will more or less like also, share some more light. So I said that today, if you look at the state of AI today, we have users, we have builders. Users are really, anytime you see yourself using ChatGPT, generative AI, you're a user, right? Anytime you also see yourself using any agent, anything that's called an AI agent out there, you're a user. You're just using those agents. And on this call, I'm beginning to shift your mindset from being a user to what it takes to actually build an agent. And what I'm saying is that an agent is really a smart system, right? That can think, that can decide, that can act using the power of generative AI, right? The generative AI are really all the language models that are out there. So ChatGPT, Claude, Nova, like we saw, they're all just large language models, right? So whenever you're building an intelligent system on top of those models, that's like agentic system, right? And in this case, we said it's made up of four things. We said that for you to build anything on the agentic side, you need a model. The good thing Bedrock does for us is that you can swap these models, and we saw that, right? And then system prompt, you really need to tell the agent, who are you? And in a very huge system, you might have multiple of these agents. Maybe you are the call, maybe you are the flight booking agent, maybe you are the it depends on your like we simplify the agents here, but it depends on your use case. It could be you have like a very huge system, and as part of those systems, there are really, really different agents that are, receiving stuff. And then you can actually have multiple agent collaboration, which is advanced things that we're going to see at some point, but you can actually have multiple agents, and that's where context and memory becomes important, because if you have multiple agents that are working, they need to share context. They need a place where they can, refer to what is already done and all that. That's where it becomes more important. Maybe single agents, you probably need memory, you probably don't, right? But we saw that an agent needs a prompt that gives the agent a role, right? And then tools. In this case, we only use one tool, but it could be a tool. There could be a tool that calls an API. Check if if flight is open. If there's like a flight for this particular time, if it returns the result, depending on what the result is, it can do another action and all that. You can actually have like a workflow that your agent goes through, right? And then we didn't even look at the memory and the context in this case. Memory especially. Context is still when you pass, there is like the system prompt, but you also pass your own prompt to it. All that is also part of the context window. But outside that, you can also use memory to actually now begin to track the user's interaction and see what they are doing, right, with your system. So honestly, if you understand these, you begin to maybe appreciate some of the agents you're also working with today, right, from a user's perspective. And honestly, that's really my goal here, not just to meet people who are using tools today, but help them build tools like that, number one. And also, when you see those tools in action, they are not magic. They're basically doing stuff, and they are doing stuff. And these are the tools. And that's why you see sometimes, if you use an agent, sometimes it's browsing the internet, right? Because it has a tool behind the scene that you can use to open a website, check the content, get the content back, pass it properly using like Gen AI, and then return the right result to you. So all that is really what it's doing. The only thing I think you need to pay attention to is really the framework part, because you need to pick a framework for you to be able to write your agent. For on this call, I'll focus more on, anytime I come and talk anything about agents here, it's going to be Strands. It's not, because yes, it's all AWS native, but trust me, there are all other multiple tools that are out there that you can use. Okay, I think that's a good. It's I said a lot today, so I think that's like a good way to more or less like pass message. Just know that what we basically do is really agent 101, right? What does it take to actually have like an agentic AI right out there, especially in the context of using AWS in this case. And we saw how it was just very quick for us to build a layer on the side. So what the only thing I'm going to do, I'm also now going to be referring to my lab to basically remove the things that we've built, right? So just delete stuff. And here again, I'm just going to be picking the things from my lab, right? So the first thing I'm going to, in the lab, there's a place where it's saying I can tail the log. So it's preparing the terminal again because I left there. I'm just going to clear. So in the lab, there's a place where it was telling me that I can actually tail the log to see. So this is like the log for the Lambda, right? You can see this is exactly what happened. This is exactly what it did. In the case that the operation name is invalid, correct operation. I will retry this transition publication. I mean, this you can actually see that we didn't see this as part of the logs, but it's actually nice I'm doing it now because you can see that thinking, right? It's thinking because it's no longer a Lambda function. We've actually put an intelligent system there. You can see it's thinking. I need to translate the message. I love teaching AWS on TikTok to French and then publish it to a specified SNS topic. The translation of the message is blah, 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 right? It's thinking at this point. And then at some point, it said the tool result indicates that the operation name published to topic is invalid. The correct operation name is blah, blah, blah. It did say some things, and it said that we tried the translation publication using the correct operation name, right? I mean, I didn't do this. I didn't see this behind the scene, but I got the right result. And then it said it was using the tool. And then once it did that, it did forward the right message to me, right? So cool. And you can see this is all serverless. So even if I don't touch this again, it's not gonna do anything. So there are many systems that you're going to be seeing that are going to be more or less like re-architecting their systems to use agents now. Because it's really smart. You can benefit from the old, but also do it the AI way, right? So instead of you writing Boto3 calls, no, agents don't need to do all that. You can actually just wrap all that as tools and then expose that to the agent. Okay. So I think that's like so the only thing, what's here in the lab is saying we should delete the Lambda function. I'm just going to go with what the lab said here. So we're just doing, I could do this in the UI, but it's all in the lab. So I'm just replaying it just to make sure that, yeah, we're getting the result. So that Lambda function has been deleted. We will also get the layer version. So there's like a code here that says what we can do is that we can actually list layer version. We're looking for this particular layer and we're just getting the layer version out. So if I actually echo this, what you see is that if I do this, what you see is that the layered version is 2. So that's actually the version we want to delete. So we're just going to go here and delete the version. So the layered version is gone. So remember, we created a layer for the Lambda function to use. We've deleted that now. Trust me, if we were doing this with IAC, obviously, it's make like just Terraform apply and Terraform destroy. I've shown that too on the call. So there are easier ways to get these things working, right? But sometimes it's also good you see how you can do it from the console and sometimes from the CLI, from the IAC. There are just many ways you can go about doing this, okay? So you're not boxed to using one. So here I'm just going to paste this command. It says get caller identity. I'm just creating for the account ID. And because I need that to basically delete some of the things that I'm going to be doing, there is also like, I'm giving it the topic ARN, right? I could as well just paste this, but I'm just doing that. And then the next thing I want to do is get all the subscriptions. Remember I told you I'm also following the lab on this call. The subscriptions are there. And then I'm just going to paste a small bash command that deletes all the subscription that I did use as part of the call. The subscriptions are gone. And then here, I'm just going to delete the SNS topic. So it's here. But again, honestly, this is like, it's not worth stressing you on. You can actually go to the console and delete all these things yourself. I'm just doing it from the CLI. So for example, if you go to this and I refresh this topic, you see that it's no longer here because I just deleted it from the CLI, right? It's no longer there. I don't have that topic again. I don't have the subscription again. And then the next thing I'm really going to be doing is, I think we did specify the bucket. So I'm just going to do remove the bucket. So the next command I'm going to be running is this. I'm just going to find the bucket ARN. So I'm going to do S3. Like I said, if you are a builder, you appreciate some of the things I'm doing. But if you are not a builder, maybe this might not appeal to you. And that's why I said my call is really for people who want to build. Because honestly, AWS is not, it's fun to work with. But if you're not building anything, there's no point. I see people, they say they want to learn cloud. The cloud does not work without you building stuff. Right? You have to build. If you find a follower, if you find somebody you like what they're doing, you want to learn from them, you the only way you can try to aspire to be more than them or like set record for yourself is building. It's true building, right? Sometimes it's following labs, sometimes it's trying to reproduce a problem, and all that. That's how you grow. Okay. So here I'm just going to do remove, and here what I'm just doing is I'm trying to remove the layer that we did create. Remember that for strands to work, we had to create like a layer, right? So I'm just removing that element. So we deleted this file. And then here, I'm just going to do the same, but in this case, I'm just deleting the bucket entirely, right? So I can as well do this from the UI, but here I'm just going to be removing the bucket. So it's this. What was I doing? I think I just want to copy this bucket name and then remove it, right? So I'm just going to paste this. So remove bucket. So at this point, we're able to remove the object in the bucket. So if I refresh, that bucket is gone. Cool. And then we will also delete the log group, right? The log group that was created as part of the Lambda function. So I'm just going to paste this. Perfect. So here I'm doing mix of UI CLI, and I think I've shown different ways of doing these things. Everything that you saw here, I can put it in Terraform and just do Terraform apply. It brings it up, it creates a layer, it packages the strands, strands agents, the tools and everything, publishes to S3, use that as the URL for the Lambda layered version, use that version for the Lambda function, and then, honestly, all that would just be like simple Terraform apply, or if you were using infrastructure, more or less like CloudFormation, right? So, but here I'm just showing you. I show you a lot of ways that you can do all these things. Sometimes from the CLI, sometimes from the. But again, you also don't need to. These things you get comfortable with them as you use them often. You don't need to memorize, right? Honestly, there's just how many things can you memorize, right? Because sometimes you're dealing with IAC, sometimes you're moving to code, you're writing maybe depending on your language that you're writing. Sometimes you're moving to inside Kubernetes. Sometimes you're moving into trying to work with AWS service. There's so many things you're going to deal with as a cloud engineer or DevOps engineer, especially if you're working with AWS. So what I always tell people is that you get comfortable with using tools as you go. Don't feel there is no pressure for you to cram things, for you to understand exactly. These things are all documented, right? Even the agents that you saw, the Strands agent that I was using, there's a documentation if you wanted to build more complex stuff, right? In our case, we just built something very simple, but we can extend that example to very more complex case, sometimes even using multiple agents, okay? But again, we'll take it one step at a time and continue to build on this thing. But again, like I've mentioned, this lab, there's a screen I'm actually not sharing to you, but that screen is basically, I'm doing this from my own labs, the labs that I've created, because I have a website that I'm actually working on that is close to finish. And the whole idea is that these labs will just be there. You can actually go through these labs. You can see them step by step. And they are not labs that were created in a rush. They are labs that I have gone through and I know it's going to give you like the best value. So I'm creating them. You see step by step, whether it's code, whatever you need for that lab to come to life, it will be there, right? And yeah, as part of that website also, I'm repurposing my TikTok. I think I've my Discord. I think I've mentioned that before because that's really where I'll be supporting people from the website, just to see the people who are building. There'll be content for non-builders, but there'll also be content for builders who really wants to build. Just in case you are building, you're having any issues, that's where my Discord is now going to be targeted. That's where, and all that integration is really from the website. So at some point, the only way you can get to my Discord is through the website. But that's like an optional. If you want that step, you can also ignore it and just enjoy the content that you see on the website. There will be different kind of content for different people. There'll be builders related content for builders who are really building, who are growing, like going through like a path that I'm setting, right? Whether it's around AI, whether it's around this, there's a lot that I have planned, and I'm more or less like I'm at that point where I can't wait to share it. But trust me, a lot of work has gone inside of it to get it ready, and I'm just waiting to. The last post that I did make, you see like a screenshot of it. It's just that's like the front page of the site. But there's a lot. So even my Discord, from there you can basically just get to Discord. So there's no more point you asking me, oh, how do I get to Discord? If you go through the right channel, you will find yourself in Discord, and that's where we're going to take the conversation forward. If you really want to grow in any of these areas, whether it's around, because the thing is that some of these things, once you understand them, certifications become it becomes like a benefit. It becomes something you just benefit from because you already know these things, all right? Because if you look at this thing, as simple as this example is that we've done today, we've touched a number of things. First of all, we introduced agents. What are agents? We've introduced Bedrock in a way, because Bedrock in this case was really helping us to invoke a model without having to be tied. We can customize that model if we wanted. We also looked at the Lambda function. As simple as that is, you can see it's also coming back to life here. We talked about the layer. A layer is really not something I've shared before, but you can see how the Lambda function, the code is so clean. You don't need to bother yourself with that package, and you can move the package into a layer. And then you saw how we could use like a tool that was sending message to SNS, having a subscription, all the things we've built before. We still can pipe all that into like an agentic framework, and you still can get the same value that you've seen before in the past. So there's a lot I will be sharing, just so you know. Again, like these days I only show up here on Sundays because I'm taking up more on, like, there's just so many challenges that I'm beginning to solve lately. So I would also limit the time that I spend here. But trust me, whenever I come here, just know there's something. You're just going to learn something nice. But the website is really where you're going to be seeing really the things that are coming from me, and they're built from a builder's perspective. Trust me, some of those things are coming from code. They're coming from like a place, and I'm not just writing them for you to test. I'm writing them, testing them, building those labs in such a way that if you can go through them, there is nothing that would stop you from just understanding, because there's so many things you can learn from AWS. It's just like me creating the things that I feel, if you know these things, there's no way you will not function right in terms of like with your learning, your growth in AWS and your cloud and your DevOps journey, right? So it's one website that I'm really trying to put all the things that I've learned over time, pour it out there, and at some point I'm going to be extending it to collaborators also. um, if you have any question, you can ask. We've said a lot on this call, not just talking. We've also showed exactly how things work in the context of AWS. So many people have joined this call, so many follows. But if you have any question, honestly, that's why I have days like this. You can ask, you can contribute, you can yes, the whole idea is that, yeah, we need to keep growing. And I think that's really why I wanted to introduce the part of AI. It's not hard. The AI you see out there, the only thing is that you just need to graduate from being a user to being a builder. That's just the only thing I feel you just need to graduate from. And as with everything cloud, many of the things you use today, they are hosted in the cloud. And honestly, as part of my website, is really what I'm going to be focusing on. It's not magic. It's not magic. Really, it's just the fact that the way you can have agents on your local on-premise environment, you still can have agents in your AWS environment. It's the same. It's just the same context. But again, the notion of agents, models, generative AI is not native to AWS. You can basically do that elsewhere. But here, my focus is really helping you bring it home and see how you can just begin to get productive. Right? There are many things I'm going to show you, because right now we just built a singular agent, right? But we can extend that. We can have multi-agent collaboration. We can have different patterns. We can have like agent as tools. So you can have many of those Lambda functions becoming tools to even another agent, such that an agent, in this case, we were using an AWS tool, but sometimes that's not what you want. Sometimes you want to use your own tools, and your tools could be agents also. So you can have like an orchestration in front of it, and then that orchestration is going to look at the tools that are available in the form of agents, and then can call them, right, and then get response. We're going to see that as time goes on. Um, yeah, that's really what I wanted to share. If you've been on this call from the beginning, you have any question, you can ask.